Hey, this is Steve Elliott with Grassfire, and glad to talk to our online team. There's not very many better days than this to chat, to discuss, to look at the issues, to look at what's happening in our country. Pretty exciting stuff if you watch the press conference with President-elect Trump, if you're watching what's happening in the news, if you're... We're going to cover a couple things today. First, ROP Obamacare, and I'm actually going to put a question mark on the end of that. I think it's still a question whether the Republican Congress is going to have the courage to actually take on the Democrats in a real way and repeal and replace Obamacare this year. We'll talk about that. How about this? RIP fake news. This is fascinating. This is what came out of yesterday's press, one of the many things that came out of yesterday's press conference. And Asik Hamad, if you're not familiar with that name, you will be by the end we get ended our time together chatting, and John McCain. John McCain. So let's start with Obamacare. If you're watching closely, you'll know that the Senate voted last night on the budget resolution, which is the framework by which Congress will then use reconciliation to repeal parts of Obamacare. Reconciliation, as I'm sure you recall, is how Obama and the Democrats managed to pass the entire Obamacare fiasco, corrupt fiasco, without one Republican vote. You remember they called it fines, they didn't call it taxes, and then when it came to the Supreme Court, they changed their tune and had to say it was taxes because it was unconstitutional as a fine, it had to be listed as a tax. So they did this through budget reconciliation, which did not require the Democrats to have one Republican vote. And now the Republicans are going to certainly, they're going to repeal at least big parts of Obamacare through the same process of reconciliation. So they've started that. So the Senate vote has already happened. The House will be voting before the end of this week. And we expect both the House and the House will go along with the Senate and pass this resolution, which will then turn it to the committees in the House and the Senate to formulate the specifics of the budget by which Obamacare can be repealed, at least in part. Now, Grassfire team members are very engaged in this. We'll be delivering 72,000, maybe 75,000 by the time we're done, petitions to Capitol Hill, urging Congress to do this, very simply, to repeal and replace Obamacare this year. The reason we're doing that is because there's very clear signs that the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate, unless it was for the push of grassroots citizens like you and ultimately of President-elect Trump, they would do a partial repeal and trust me plan because they don't want to have to go toe-to-toe with any Democrats on a full repeal and replacement, which will most likely require some Democrat votes and require some political pressure and require an actual plan. So the Republicans were giving signs that we'll get this partial repeal done and we'll wait and maybe in a few years. Well, there's been grassroots pressure from our team members, from citizens across the country saying that's just not going to be good enough. And then President-elect Trump was very clear in his press conference that that's not going to be good enough. In fact, he said, we're going to do the replacement and the repeal very quickly with the repeal, or even simultaneously. So he's going to put pressure on Congress to act very quickly, and grassroots citizens across the country need to keep the pressure on to do this very quickly. It has to happen this year. This is the year to repeal and replace Obamacare. If it doesn't happen this year, next year's another election year. We start getting to the election cycles. It gets more and more difficult. The momentum is now. And there's another reason we want to get this done this year, because we don't trust Congress. We don't trust them. It's just that simple. Here's one of the reasons we don't trust them. If you start to read the budget resolution, you'll discover some startling numbers. Here's a few that we pulled out. $2.5 trillion in debt. This is the framework for the budget that they're working with, that they're happy with. $2.56 trillion in new debt during the first 4 years of the Trump administration. Look at those deficits: $582 billion, $541 billion, $673 billion, $728 billion. So we have Republican leaders giving a rubber stamp for a framework on budget deficits that then escalate after this and add almost the same amount of debt that Obama added in 8 years over the next 8 years, about $9.5 trillion in debt will be added with this budget framework that they're willing to sign off on. Rand Paul and some others are saying, wait a minute, we can't approve this framework without a plan to reduce this debt and also to repeal and replace Obamacare. So that's the pressure that we need to keep on members of Congress in the coming days and weeks. We expect it to be a huge battle. It's not going to be an easy fight. So that's why I put a question mark up there. We've got to keep the pressure on Congress to do what's right here. How about RIP fake news? This was probably the most amazing thing I've ever seen at a press conference. I'm talking about the confrontation, direct confrontation between President-elect Trump and the CNN reporter in the front row. I think we can call this the end or the death of this fake news agenda that was pushed by Washington Post and the liberal media to characterize Breitbart, Liberty News, and conservative independent news sources as fake news. That was their one of the most important goals, maybe the number 2 goal. Number 1 goal is to discredit Trump. Number 2 is to destroy alternative media, because those alternative media sources have undermined the stranglehold of power that the left has had on our society for decades. So they started calling out very specifically that alternative sources of news and information like Grassfire and Liberty News, they started calling us fake news. Well, unfortunately for them, they are actually the ones who are promoting the most fake news. Right from their political leaders, if we go back to Benghazi, the fake news narrative of the video, which supposedly caused the Benghazi crisis, on and on and on and we go, where the left is aggressively promoting fake news, and liberal media sources have been caught promoting fake news time and time again since the election. Most recently, this 36-page dossier, which was a drummed up attack hit piece, manufactured hit piece against Trump, paid for by Republican opponents of Trump, and then further paid for by Democratic opponents of Trump. Purely a political hit piece which has not been corroborated, which has not been verified in any way. The media started to promote this very specifically. It started with BuzzFeed, but then CNN weighed in with an article which they trying to couch as, well, we didn't release the document, but they gave great credence and credibility to what this bogus hit piece was doing, was calling out. So then we have President Trump in the press conference specifically calling out, and I want to play that clip for you real quick, because I think it's worth. This is history. This is history happening.
Go ahead. Sir, can you state, Mr. President-elect,
go ahead.
Can you state
She's
categorically,
asking a question.
Mr. President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you give us a question?
I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state categorically that nobody... No.
Let's be honest, we've never seen a press conference quite like this. We've never seen a president-elect quite like this. The president-elect of the United States called out the CNN reporter who was being blatantly rude, who was interrupting, and ultimately called him fake news. Well, this is going to create a war between the Trump administration and the fake news agencies like CNN and elsewhere, and they are going to double down and attack, and attack, and attack, and attack, and they're going to go for the kill. Now, the interesting thing is, this fake news word, we have been so calling out the left for how they have promoted fake news, and this is a great example of the left promoting fake news, that now we actually have the left saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't use this term fake news anymore. The Washington Post, an article in the Washington Post specifically saying maybe we shouldn't use fake news because they've been called out and exposed as the real promoters of fake news. So we got RIP Obamacare with a question mark, RIP fake news, and how about R.E. Asik Hamad. Maybe you haven't heard the name Asik Hamad. I don't know if you have. He's known as Esteban Santiago. He is the terrorist who murdered innocent citizens in Fort Lauderdale last week. You may not have heard that Esteban Santiago was most likely, or very strong evidence now, that he was radicalized in the 2000s. He actually took the name. Now there's evidence online that he took the name Asik Hamad. He posted Islamic videos. You're not hearing any of this. All you're hearing is Esteban Santiago is a white Hispanic, former military member who is deranged and used his gun. That's what you're hearing. Now, this Esteban Santiago, what the fake news agencies are not reporting is it now is becoming apparent that he took the name Asik Hamad and is most likely has been radicalized in his life. And if this is not a connection to radical Islam, and of course they don't want that connection to be made, they want it to be a white, Hispanic, ex-military gun toter. That's what they want it to be. But this is actually what has happened. You can look it up on, if you search his name on the internet, you're going to get some great resources on that. Very interesting. So Ari Asik Hamad. And last one I want to cover today is how about R.E.T.? That wasn't a very good E, was it? How about R.E.T. John McCain? You know, maybe it's just time, Senator McCain. Thank you for your service to this country. Maybe it's time for you to retire. Maybe it's time. I mean, this may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say, when now you're admitting that you are the one who took the bogus dossier directly to the FBI. You're the one who took a bogus dossier directly to the FBI. Your hatred for conservatives, your hatred for President-elect Trump, your hatred for anything that's not your establishment ways was clearly exposed once and for all. And I think it's time to R.E.T., to retire. Now, Grassfire team members, I want to thank you for all you're doing. As I mentioned, we'll be delivering close to 75,000 petitions calling for a real repeal of Obamacare and replacement this year. We're not going to settle for anything less, and we're not going to settle for a budget that ultimately looks like this. It actually adds $9 trillion to the deficit over 8 years. We're just not going to let you play your games. We're going to expose it every step of the way, and we're going to demand real reform in our country. So thank you, Grassfire team members. We've got about 10,000 faxes that are heading up to Capitol Hill this week. We're also very much engaged in giving our team members a voice on these committee hearings. You may have received, if you're a Grassfire team member, may have received a poll regarding Senator Sessions. If you haven't answered that poll, please do that. And if you haven't been to grassfire.com lately, please do. Please go to grassfire.com and start your social profile. We have a new social framework that has all the tools that you'll see on Facebook that allow you to connect, to engage, to really continue undermining the left's agenda, which is twofold: to destroy the president-elect and his agenda, and to undermine and discredit alternative news sources which are holding the left accountable and exposing all these things that are happening out there right now. So thanks again for all you're doing as a Grassfire team member, and we encourage you, please go to grassfire.com, get connected, get engaged, and let's get going and see an incredible year where we can really see things happen if we will hold these leaders' feet to the fire. Thanks so much.